Hi, I'm Ryan Hines, and this is
Orr Shtuhl. Hello.
We're both designers at Wirecutter, a New York Times company. And we're here to talk to you about the redesign and rebrand of our website, which just launched kind of in the past month or two. So without further ado, so in our company Slack, we have a Wirecutter channel. So you'll see some GIFs throughout of cats and other animals doing things. Just stay tuned for those. So this will be a Wirecutter 101. In case you don't know what Wirecutter does, we're a product review website. Or do you want to talk a little bit about what we do?
Sure. We're a product review website. The key differentiator, as Dan already mentioned, is we try to hone things down to the one thing you need. So whereas many product sites will have 50 different pages for 50 different blenders, or phones, or printers, or washing machines, we'll have just the one. We test them all insanely, and we do a bit of meta reviewing and research into the industry. We tell you the best one for that.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So Wirecutter started about 5 years ago with a guy called Brian Lamb. Anyone in the audience familiar with Brian Lamb?
Sure.
A couple out there. Brian used to work for Gizmodo, and about 5 or 6 years ago, he was kind of burned out on tech journalism and decided to move to Hawaii, which he's pictured here, standing in the surf in Hawaii, and kind of like reevaluate his life, go surfing, and that is where he actually got the idea to start Wirecutter. He was kind of sick of the tech news cycle, constantly churning out content, only to have to do it again the very next day, kind of drowning in a sea of noise. So this is the very first version of Wirecutter. Very MVP, viable, maybe. The standing joke at Wirecutter is whether or not they were, in fact, sponsored by Intel. I don't think we actually know that. You may have just put that there, but effective anyway. So the basic idea of Wirecutter is that we're looking for the best for most. We're not trying to be the best for the kind of tech enthusiast or the kind of like insane home person, but just most people out there. So sometimes we get a little flack for that, but it is really about kind of getting something that everybody can use. And our review process is a little bit different from other companies, other review sites. We go through this rigorous process, but at the end of the process, we actually don't abandon the review. We continue to maintain it. We have a whole updates team that goes through and continues to keep these things as living reviews, living documents. So if you want to check back in on something, it isn't going to be outdated in 6 months. So what we're here to talk about, the new Wirecutter. Just kind of talking about things in 3 steps today. We're talking about the rebrand, the redesign, and kind of our expansion. The rebrand is about merging 2 websites. When we talk about Wirecutter, we're actually talking about Wirecutter and Sweet Home. Wirecutter was primarily about technology reviews. Sweet Home followed a couple of years later, focusing on kind of home and those kind of items. So what we needed to do was merge these 2 websites under a new visual identity. And then moving on to the redesign, we needed to redesign the website, obviously. And then kind of make an identity that could encompass all of these new product categories that we're looking to expand into. And last but not least, build new features for our readers, which Orr's going to talk about a little bit later. So some more lovely cats. So as I said, Wirecutter and Sweet Home, 2 kind of like mutually exclusive websites with their own kind of separate equity. Kind of unclear what happens when you put them together. What we haven't mentioned up to this point is that about a year ago, Wirecutter was acquired by the New York Times. My backstory here is that I was working in the brand identity group at the New York Times when I joined Wirecutter. So we have a very complicated picture of kind of brand identity. And the New York Times is this, 100-plus-year-old company. Wirecutter and Sweet Home are like 5 years old. So it's these very interesting challenges of kind of new and old. Something that this is new for the Times, is that it's a much more independent company than the Times is used to owning. We kind of have our own voice in a way that a lot of Times properties don't. So that was an interesting challenge. So we wanted to make sure that the new Wirecutter was expansive and inclusive for everyone. You know, we have our own voice. We're a New York Times company, but we have our own voice. Our old identity didn't really reflect the tone or quality of our work, so we wanted the new identity, obviously, to do that. And kind of, we do have a lot of overlap, Wirecutter and the Times, and kind of like our journalistic mission, integrity, and obviously we would just want to be friendly and accessible. So these are some of our core values: human, journalistic, independent, reader-centric, real world. This is our competitive landscape. I usually just kind of say, look at this without further comment, but it's kind of useful to just see like what world we're living in. For color, for typography, just the kind of focus that people give on different types of reviews. Similarly, the Times has its own kind of brand landscape, and we were looking for a way to kind of slot ourselves in. You can see where we were on the far right there. Things like the core New York Times brand are all the way to the left. And we're looking to kind of like rein it in a certain way, like so that it doesn't feel like it's completely coming from a different place, and kind of lean on the typographic tradition of the Times, but not, you know, not be too crazy. And similarly with color, you know, when you think about the core New York Times brand, the colors are kind of muted. It's very rational. It's very objective. And most of our marketing kind of on the other extreme, because it lives off-platform and is kind of traveling around the web, is a lot louder, especially in recent years. So we're kind of trying to sit in between product and marketing in that sense, like between things that live kind of partially on and off-platform and things that live almost entirely off-platform. So, you know, when you do an identity, you make a bunch of W's. That's the short version of it. We kind of knew right away that we wanted to have something like a symbol, like a monogram, like a mark, that could just easily travel around in a self-contained unit. We explored all kinds of different W's. We looked at kind of, you know, going back to the idea of this wire or something being unwrapped. We tried calligraphic, you know, to go back to the New York Times black letter, calligraphic W's, and nothing really worked until we got to, oops, I'm one slide ahead here, sorry. When we get to that slide, there is a W that you'll see that we chose, but in the meantime, there is a word mark that we went with. This started with Founders Grotesque Semi-Bold, which is the sans serif typeface, by Chris Sowersby from New Zealand. This typeface was very close to what we wanted. Basically, at the New York Times, there were no typefaces that kind of encapsulated the feeling that we wanted to convey with the new identity. So we redrew it a little bit. We kind of, you'll see there's some changes here to all the letters. We did like a round dot on the I to make it more friendly, kind of opened up some of the letters to make them a little bit more legible at small sizes, and redrew the T's and the W. And kerning, of course. All graphic designers have to kern.
Any follow-up type questions? This is your guy to find after the talk.
I'm going to just go ahead here. So this is our new logo. We actually ended up going back a little bit to the idea of unwrapping and writing, the dimensionality of our process, trying to show a little bit of the quirk of how we operate, but in a kind of more clear, straightforward manner. And then it's locked up in this vertical lockup with the logo type. This is the horizontal version, which you'll see mostly on the website. It often says the New York Times Company below it, depending on where it's appearing and how large or small. This is our new brand color palette, partial. We're going to talk more about it later. One of the things that we looked at with the new design was to try to use color to symbolize different ideas. So our process is this blue. We run on an affiliate revenue model, so anytime, well, many times when you buy something on our site, a portion of the revenue will come back to us. That's how we support ourselves. So for a clarity move, we decided to make all the affiliate links in this color red. So you know what you're getting, you know kind of like where we stand to make money and where we don't. All the other links are just links, they're underlined, just to kind of like be really clear about what we're doing and when. So back to type, sorry, Orr. So we started from the ground up with some New York Times typefaces. Imperial is what you will see at the bottom there. That's what you'll see in the newspaper, the New York Times newspaper, on the website, pretty much everywhere. It's a kind of workhorse text typeface. It has a high X height. It reads really well, kind of at all sizes. It's great. It was a no-brainer to use it. It was like a gift. Franklin Gothic, medium and bold, these are also the typefaces that the Times uses primarily for kind of bylines and information and data visualizations. And at the top, it's Serifa bold and light. These are not Times typefaces. These are typefaces that kind of felt like they were coming from the same place as some of our typefaces like Karnak and Stymie, but they were signaling a little bit of a shift. So we just wanted to make it clear that we were doing something a little bit different from the Times, so we selected those. So redesign.
Some of the templates, we skipped ahead. So a quick look at our old site. This is what the old article template looked like. Yes, don't mind if I do. It's the green button.
Yeah.
Cool. This is the redesign template at the top of the page anyway. One of the big things we had to work with is that our reviews are remarkably long. The half of you here who have read them, how many of you have read to the end of one of our reviews? 3. All right, cool. No, it's no exaggeration. We often write 10 or 15,000 words because we are exhaustive. Our writers do a wonderful job of doing the inverted pyramid where we put the pics at the top, so if you don't want to read, you don't have to. But sometimes you have a specific use case that you need to dig into, and we wanted to make it a little bit easier to do that. So moving down a little bit, this is our call out where you have the big coral colored buy button. We'll talk more about colors later. But here's the research, a new table of contents we added. When we were launching this is on mobile as well. When we were getting into this, of course, we expected this to do better than the old design because the old design was 7, 8 years old. But the responsible thing to do, of course, is to A/B test it. So when we did this, the biggest impact we were expecting to see was on mobile. As I said, 10,000 words on desktop is long enough. 10,000 on a mobile phone is extraordinary. So we wanted to come up with a couple of things to make it a little bit easier to condense that on mobile, make it more scannable. This is the big improvement we had with the table of contents. And we were very happy to find out that yes, 26% was the lift on click-through rate we got on mobile in the A/B test. Much higher than we expected, almost closed the gap from mobile to desktop, which is very nice to see. There were a lot of great type treatments and legibility improvements we added, but we think the big thing was that expand collapse. We put that here mostly to say that A/B testing is a wonderful thing. Can't be said too many times. And then we have the expansion. I'm just going to let that play. Okay. So in the deal section of the site, this is a section that many of us were readers of Wirecutter before we joined, but I personally wasn't as familiar with. Our hallmark publication is the reviews, but we do have a deal section, which is also carefully edited by a group of deals editors who spend all day looking at deals on the internet so that normal people don't have to. What I want to point out here is that, can you go back? Yes. Right here. So this is a tiny little bit of green text that's saying you're going to save this much money on a deal. This is where we're starting to see the color palette at play. Whenever we use color, we want to use it with intention. We want to assign, as Ryan showed, a meaning to each one. Whether or not you know that as a user, it doesn't really matter. It's important to us, and we hope that it's a subconscious signal. So green, very subtly, indicates a deal or savings in some way. This is the deal section of the page. And the deal section is like a little bit, we have a lot of room, a lot of ideas for growth there. So this is one where we're already starting to iterate. As you'll see here, this green indicator is something that when you go to a review, like this one for the lantern, and you scroll down, you're going to see that same green line of text in a review. That's a new thing we just rolled out just a week or two ago. So this is one of the first examples. This is exciting for us. This is one of the first features we could put out after the launch, which took up most of our efforts. It's where you start to see when you lay a foundational set of rules, a bit of a design system, you now have these decisions that are much easier to make when parts of your businesses are interacting with each other. We never before had anything remotely like a deal on a review, and now when we do that, we have an easy way to indicate it. So there's the green. And internal branding. It deals with it. I'm going to get that. You want to talk about the homepage a little bit?
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, one of the things that we really needed to do with this new website was expand into all these other categories. Not just, we always say that we're not combining Wirecutter and Sweet Home, we're actually combining them and making it into a brand new site. So the new Wirecutter is not the old Wirecutter plus Sweet Home, it's a completely different thing. So these are all the things that we kind of do now, all the different areas that we include. All right, gonna go back one. So on the right, you can see Deals We Love that Orr mentioned before. This is the thing that we're trying to brand with the color green. You can see on our social media that the Deals We Love heart, it's basically the Wirecutter identity, but transmutated into like a green heart because it was just an obvious move and we thought it would be fun. And this post-it that you see on the top left, New Home, Same Crew, that's a little bit of a nod to our dearly departed Sweet Home, which we had a funeral for on Friday of last week. It was really sad, but we were glad to be all under one roof, and everyone's pretty excited about the future.
Sticky note for a moment? One more. So we designed this originally, had one purpose, it was to announce the launch. There's a huge change for our readers who've been following the same site for 6 years, and we knew we'd get some feedback, of course, and we wanted to be able to express it, meet it as much as possible. So we wanted some kind of sticky that felt editorial, felt casual, but from our editors on the homepage. Of course, we knew that once you put something on the homepage, it's going to stay there for a little while until it can find a good reason to get rid of it. So we wanted to, again, be intentional here and say, how else can we use this in the future? If we're thinking of this in a systemic way, what is the purpose of this card that looks like this? So we did a little bit of usability test here. It brings us to the idea of Zen moments. Any super fans of the old Wirecutter site may remember these Zen moments that were at the extreme bottom of the homepage in plain italic text with no explanation and no function whatsoever. But every day it would refresh and show a little kind of fortune cookie saying. This is one of my favorites about early adoption. A lot of people at Wirecutter were excited to see what we're going to do with these on the new website. And as designers, this is a really fun challenge. We were a little strapped for time, but the post-it seemed like a logical place for that voice. So we put it to a test. We tested 4 different variants here, different use cases for an announcement kind of box. You see here social, a deal alert, and this Wirecutterism, just a saying with no real label. Universally confused about these fortune cookie sayings in our test. We were a little surprised at that, but it was a great finding. And really just it's everything you could ask for in a usability test, which is to get you out of your own head and say, what are regular people going to think? Even our editors, even our social media folks who are constantly talking with our readers, that was our existing readership. Now we have a much bigger spotlight on us. We have traffic coming in from the New York Times. We have partnerships going all over the place. And so we need to be sensitive to both existing users and the new ones. What we learned here is that, of course, the voice is not going away. Of course, we truly believe that you should splurge on the tools of your craft. But we need to act intentionally when we use this voice and not just slap it like a bumper sticker. So we took it off for now. Last thing, we're going to kind of step aside for a moment, at least for the devs and designers in the room, and for product folks, just like let your devs and designers do this. Design systems and style guides are so immensely important and so immensely efficient when you have one. But when you're moving quickly and you have a deadline for a launch, it's the last thing you're ever going to carve out time to do. And rightfully so. We didn't do this as our redesign either. If we had had a month or two to sit around and think of the perfect color system and the perfect font system first, designing the site would have gone a lot more easily, but we didn't have that luxury. However, right after launch, when everyone's basking in the positive tweets and the media coverage, and your devs are taking a much-needed vacation, use that time to create the style guide. Before you start iterating, before you start building all those features, that pause is the best time to do it. Because honestly, this was a really quick and dirty one that I pulled together in a couple of mornings, and it took less than a week. All we had to do is go through our designs, say, where's the most common grid system we're using? What are the most common fonts? What are the color palettes? And conference once or twice, say, what are the ones, maybe make a couple granular decisions about what we want to keep, what we want to throw out. And immediately, that's made our development and design process much quicker. It reduces like decision overhead for future features. And it's going to make it a lot easier as we grow and hire new designers who don't have to go figure out how we thought of all this stuff. They have a rule book. So that's my 2 cents on design systems. If you have more questions, come find me afterward. Last but not least, still busy around here.
Yeah. So something that just launched this last week is a collaboration with the New York Times. It's a holiday gift guide. It's, I think, 2/3 Wirecutter reviews, Wirecutter writers. And you should go check it out as soon as possible when you're done here. And the other thing that we have coming up, of course, next week is Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So this is a really big part of our year financially. So we're all kind of like running around like crazy right now getting ready for it.
Yeah, talk to me about shopping.
Yeah.
All right, and that's it. Any questions? Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you both. What is your gift of the year?
My personal single gift of the year? Yeah. Okay, it's a book. It's called The Works. I'm afraid I do not remember the author's title, but she used to work for the New York City government. And so it's a coffee table book. And it's basically like instructional drawings of how insanely large city systems work, from sewer to the subway to like all kinds of huge infrastructural things. And I'm about to buy many of them for many people. Yeah. Do you have one?
Mexican Amaro that I gave you a bottle of a week ago.
Oh, that's true. It's very good. It's called Vallejo, I think.
Cool. All right, time for real questions.
Hmm? Yeah. When you say data, do you say a little more what part of the data? Right. Sure. Yeah, we had, there were a couple of moving parts there. A lot of it, fortunately the categories, we didn't, most things were not recategorized because there's generally a clear difference between Wirecutter and Sweet Home, like in the past. So like kitchen just remained kitchen and was ported over. I know our like data and SEO teams did a lot of work with the tagging, but I think what you're talking about, I think the brunt of the lift was probably our migration team, where maybe not so much data, but like with the designs, there's a lot of, with any kind of migration from an old design to a new, there's a lot of like manual touching up that needs to happen on like the production side.
Yeah, it wasn't a matter of kind of like bringing databases over. It was kind of manually ported over, review by review, because there were so many changes to the structure of the information.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a lot of automation there. It was a team that kind of ground through hundreds of reviews and did the hard work and kind of like implemented the design. I mean, this is another thing that we wanted to do, was more kind of modularize the information so that we could use it in different ways. And before, it used to be kind of like a continuous, text entry field in the CMS, everything in one field, if you can believe that.
Yeah, that also highlights a key difference between Wirecutter and a lot of content sites, which is because we keep all of our guides updated, and so they're all evergreen to an extent. You're not porting over 10,000. You only care about the last year. We only have something on the realm of hundreds or low thousands, and we care about every page. So everything had to really be touched by a human. Good question.
you guys care about SEO and technologies like that?
We do care about SEO.
We do care about SEO. Coming soon.
Yeah, AMP's on the way. SEO is hugely important. A large percentage of our traffic comes through organic, as with most review sites. So. Of a product like a lantern or a dishwasher? Life cycle. Do you mean like how often we update it, maybe?
How long does it? It really depends on the product. Some of them are very short, and some of them, usually, even if it kind of falls out of our picks, it will still be kind of like in the competition section, which is like everything that we've reviewed at the bottom of the review. It's the secret of Wirecutter, actually. If you want to go deep, there's a lot of really useful information in that section. But usually they will migrate down there if they're not a pick any longer.
Yeah. Up here.
What kind of oversight or collaboration do the Times have in the design process?
Ooh. So the other question was, what kind of oversight or collaboration did the New York Times have with our design process?
So
funny thing.
They were involved. So I'm trying to think of the best way to put this. We worked pretty closely with the brand identity group. I actually used to work in the brand identity group, so we checked with them regularly and kind of worked independently a little bit and went back and forth until we were both happy with what we designed. It was a little tricky because like as I said, it's a new kind of product for the Times, and so we ended up pushing a little further than the Times is used to pushing. But I think we finally ended up in a really nice place in the middle where everyone was really satisfied. And yeah.
And on the more collegial side, I mean, we are unofficially we work in the Times building and sit alongside all our colleagues on news and cooking and watching and the crosswords, and we have informal meetings with them every week to constantly go over stuff like this.
There's also a pretty strong design culture in the Times, I mean, across all the different teams. So even if you don't work in the same team, there are regular design meetings. And we are a separate company, but we still kind of interact with the designers at the Times constantly and eat lunch with them. And
yeah. For scale, or for perspective, about 4 years ago, I think there were maybe 10 or 12 digital designers at the Times, and today there's 70. And so there's with the proliferation of people, you also have a proliferation of backgrounds and viewpoints, which is, it's great. We only have 3 designers on Wirecutter today, so to have 60 or 70 other colleagues to get feedback from is hugely helpful.
One last question for me, riffing off the SEO question. How did SEO, if at all, feed into the
design? I don't think it needs to very much. A lot of that work is done in the tagging and the markup. Some of the main things that we do think about, and this gets pretty granular and even kind of lower on the list of SEO factors, but obviously it has to be clean semantically. Like your headers should be understandable and properly in proper hierarchy. We come up with one tiny issue where because our pages are evergreen, we're constantly updating. And we like to catalog all those updates and be transparent and say here's a year ago this was the pick, then there was this recall, we updated it, and then this happened and this happened, almost to the extent that Wikipedia would. We noticed that sometimes Google's crawlers were getting confused by all of the dates, so we had to make a couple markup changes so it knew how new the content actually was. So those are little things we're always keeping our eye out on. I can't think of anything big though. I feel like most of it's really done in league with front end and SEO. That's a good question. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.